Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10 because it's 10. I'm Ken and we're James Alexander, estate agents. A very warm welcome to you and thank you so much for joining us yet again for our daily routine. And we broadcast every day if you haven't been here before. We're estate agents based in Southwest London in SW16 and we talk all about property every day. Why? Because we love it. Specifically here in SW16, but of course, both more broadly in sense of the UK and sometimes internationally as well, we like to talk about property. And by the way, excited to tell you we're yet again on Homes Under the Hammer once this week and now next week as well. Fabulous house next week to show you. Fabulous period home. You've got to see that one. It's an absolutely stunning home. I'm sure you'll be really impressed. I certainly was, as you'll note from the interview. So do catch up with that one. That's next week, 8th of March between 11:15 and 12:15 on BBC One, Homes Under the Hammer. Fantastic show. And thank you to them for letting us be a part of the biggest show on TV. So how are you today? Hope you're doing well. Putin's a thug, isn't he? Just a side issue, but there we are. Not much more we can say about that really, except there's some amazing work being done out there by so many people in terms of the Eastern European community particularly. There's a place in Balham where they are relentless in their donations, and there's a big centre there which is absolutely fabulous in its efforts to support the Ukrainian people. And thoughts and prayers obviously go out to all the Ukrainians and their families right now. It's an awful situation, isn't it? That thug Putin. He'll get his comeuppance. The problem is it won't be quick. It will take time. So on to property news. First of all, the weather's a bit miserable. That's sad. But tomorrow we have it. First day of the month today now. So tomorrow we've got lots of valuations coming on, and obviously pinch punch white rabbits first day of the month and all that. The key thing about March is it's springtime, and in the springtime the weather does tend to get a little better and the housing market certainly tends to heat up. And this year I think what we're going to see for the first time in a long time is London playing a major part in that. Why? Well, because during lockdown, major cities were not considered attractive. And so London lost its luster, it lost its appeal, where people were worried about the pandemic and commuting, and people were mostly Zoom commuting, not going into the office. Well, now the opposite is true. Most people are not Zoom commuting, rather, going into the physical office. And yes, there is an element of hybrid working and all the rest of it, but firms mainly want people back in the office. And what that means is London is hotting up again. It's becoming the vibrant city that it always was once more. And it's lovely to see that open up again. And with it, so we expect to see prices driven. And certainly that's our impression so far, is that the market's going to be a busy one for London. I suspect that by the same token, we may find some of the outlying areas don't have such meteoric rises and London actually catches up a little bit. Remains to be seen, but we'll see. So the appeal of new builds during the pandemic has increased, apparently, according to the Mirror today. It's an article found in the Daily Mirror. A survey commissioned by an investment firm has found 26% of homeowners are more likely to consider purchasing a new build property compared to before the pandemic. The study revealed 50% would be willing to buy a new build for their next home, with the figure jumping to 65% for those aged 18 to 34. Nearly 2/5 viewed new build developments as part of the search for the last property they were looking for. I think sometimes people do that by default, though. I think the truth is, for me, the problem with new homes for most of us is that homes in the UK are about affordability. And when you realize that new homes actually command a premium, just like with a new car, you realize that you're going to get less physical space for your money. Some people will accept that, and the trade-off is much, much lower energy bills. And that is a fabulous thing in today's market. Of course, it's more significant than ever. Look at that energy rating. Some of these new homes, we saw a new home in Cairns Avenue, which we now rent out, which was an energy rating of B. And the client told us that for their gas and electricity costs combined, they were paying £80 a month. We were bowled over by that. Be a little bit more, of course, now with the fuel crisis. But even so, it goes to show that the appeal in new homes is not just in the shiny new bit, but in actually fuel savings as well. But the trade-off is you're going to get less for your money. You're going to get less space. You may not get that detached house you want. You may find the rooms are smaller than you desire. Quite often with the mid-range new builds, they can be a little bit on the small side. But if you're out there looking at shortage of property will drive people towards new build as well, because there's so little available, of course. Economists are predicting house prices to rise at the moment. This is an article in the Daily Mail. The Mail loves a property headline, don't they? But this is an interesting one. It says, with the bank rate only expected to reach a still historically low 1% by mid-year, coupled with a lack of supply, house prices are expected to rise by 4% this year and 3% the next. The poll of 18 property market experts found, broadly unchanged from December, predictions that was. When asked how high the bank rate would have to go to significantly slow housing market activity, the median response was 1.5%, which is a long way from where we are now, and it's not anticipated it will reach that level. Asked about the value of national house prices on a scale of 1 to 10, from extremely cheap at 1 to extremely expensive at 10, the median response was 7, matching December's estimates. In the capital, it was unchanged at an 8. House prices in the capital were forecast to rise 2.4% this year, which is unchanged from the December predictions. Bank of England is mulling over its stress testing. This is an interesting one because for a while now, there have been rules since the banking crisis, particularly in 2007-9, that tightened up the criterion that lenders used in order to test affordability. And I've said for many years now that we have tenants that can comfortably afford their rent at rates that are much higher than would be their equivalent mortgage repayment, but can't get a mortgage. And that to me seems absolutely crazy, especially in these days of open banking. Surely the mortgage providers could look into their bank directly and see that they've been paying these money for all this time, and they could see that it's affordable to them, not to everybody, but to some. If you don't know, open banking allows, with your permission, banks or other financial institutions to go in and have a look at your finances to see whether certain things are affordable to you. It's a revelation actually for rental as well. We can now get answers back to some rental references within 3 hours if the tenant consents to open banking checks, because the referencing company that we use can then look straight into their bank and see whether what they're saying is correct in terms of the affordability, the amount of rent coming in, the amount of rental going out as well to their landlords. And those two numbers give us the ability to give a credit score for that buyer, that tenant, and therefore be able to move them in with confidence their next property. And that's a massive sea change. So open banking really does make a change. But they say that the Financial Conduct Authority introduced strict rules governing how lenders assess mortgage applications in the wake of the credit crunch, saying that lenders had to consider the applicant's income and expenses instead of lending borrowers a multiple of their annual salary. On top of these assessments, rules from BOE, that is Bank of England, force lenders to stress this affordability should their bank mortgage rate be more than 3% above the standard variable rate for 2-year fixed rates. The bank now believes the affordability stress test could be removed completely without jeopardizing the economy's stability. That is a sea change and could well bring more affordability to first-time buyers particularly, and even second-timers. Landlords feel they're out of depth with changing regulations. Well, there's no surprise there. They should. There have been a raft of new regulations, both in the offing and come through in the last few years. A new study has revealed 1 in 4 landlords don't feel that they're on top of those regulations. And this is research by Direct Line. And they found that of those, 27% said they wouldn't know where to start when it comes to understanding, while 20% said they can't afford the necessary legal advice. The research revealed regulation issues that landlords are not aware of, including licensing schemes, smoke and carbon monoxide tests, changing to filing deadlines for reporting paying capital gains tax when selling. Of those who feel on top of these issues, 67%, that's 1 in 3, carry out their own research. 31% employ a letting agent to help them keep up to date, and 18% receive advice from their lawyer. Talking of rentals, London rents have soared again. This is an article from predicted to grow by 14% over the next 5 years. 14%. Data from the CBRE found that all 33 London boroughs have experienced rental growth over the last 5 years. Its latest London Borough Property Report also found the average house price in London at £516,285 in 2021, with a 19% growth expected in the next 5 years. Popular areas including Kingston and Chelsea, City of London, Camden, Hammersmith and Fulham saw the largest rental increases, with prices jumping around a third for each borough. Meanwhile, separate data from Chesterton's found the average London rent has soared by 21% since 2020. 21%. Demand has increased thanks to renters returning to the city for office jobs, as well as the return of corporate tenants. Well, we would echo that. For a while now, we've seen this high street bounce back as well. And that's another article in the Mail today saying high street sales have returned to higher than pre-pandemic levels. Well, who would have thought it? In January, that is, outdoing levels seen in the last 2 years in around 3/4 of local authority areas. This is a big surprise. Spending in the average local authority was 4% higher than in January 2020. High streets seem to be bouncing back after a challenging 2 years amid the pandemic, with more than 17,000 chain outlets closing in 2021. I mean, you see it. I mean, we were actually in London yesterday, and it's sad to see some of the big chains, the big corporates closing their doors in central London or Oxford Street. No doubt there'll be other businesses that replace them, but there is something sad about the big prestige brands all going out of business that have become a bit of a stalwart of London. Apart from that, this is an interesting one I saw that made me smile. I'm a bit of a geek, so I do love a bit of space. Council approval for Shetland spaceport plans. Shetland Islands Council has approved an application by Saxavord UK Spaceport to construct the first vertical spaceport, with the company investing £43 million at a site in Lamberness in Unst. The spaceport will be home to 3 launch pads where small satellites can be launched into low Earth orbits, and up to 30 launches are planned from Unst every year, with telecommunications, media, weather, and defense companies likely to be among the clients. Finally, inflation expectations are expected to climb to a record high, and households think the cost of living will land at 4.1% in a decade's time, up from 3.8% last month. Inflation is currently at its highest rate in nearly 30 years, hitting 5.5% in January, while the Bank of England has said the rate of price rises will peak at 7.25%. It's extraordinary, isn't it? On top of that, you put the fuel crisis with Ukraine and everything at the top of the agenda. And obviously that's having a massive impact on energy costs as well, which I know you're all concerned about. Remember the podcast, the Property Buyer and Sellers podcast. Have a look at that if you haven't already. We've got some good ones there for you in terms of energy savings, and I do think it's worth your while going there just to have a listen to that. I'll put that detail on the screen now. If you haven't already, some great hints, tips and tricks for buying and selling property, some good discussions about how you might save on energy costs, because I know that's a big thing for a lot of people right now. Locally in the community here, as usual, things are coming together. There's lots of rubbish collections and different community events happening. We'll report a bit more on a few of those in the coming weeks. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic day. Pinch punch, first day of the month, white rabbits and all that. And we'll speak to you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, look after yourselves, and if you can, your friends and family. Ciao.